Ding, ding,
Woo,
ding.
hello, welcome to the big black tent where everything is black, it's philosophical, it's theological, it's representation, and we're gonna get down to the brass tacks because what you were talking about is I am Rebecca, aka Naima Freedom, and
And I am her sidekick, Natalie.
oh, you were talking about something that is resonating so loudly across all relationships, all platforms. And you talked about that the relationship, that the problem is never leadership. Usually, I mean, is never
Always leadership.
it's always leadership.
Always leadership. Always leadership. Again, people, if you tell them why you're asking them to do the thing, right? And again, this is provided you don't already have a toxic work environment, right? Which usually exists in a lot of places. But provided you don't have a toxic work environment, if you tell people why the organization, why as a department, a function, a business unit, whatever the case is, why we need to make this particular change. And then you train them on how to do that thing that you're asking them to do, right? And you want them to walk through the left door instead of the right door, right? And you give them the appropriate amount of communications to know that the left door is going to be open, the right door is closing at this time. In order to use the left door, you'll need to push instead of pull, right? You give them all of that, you train them, you bring them through a simulation, you do whatever the things are, right? On January 1, when you want them to do that thing, they will happily do it, or they'll at least do it. They may not be happy about it, but they'll do it. The issue is always leadership. Always, every single time, without fail, 10 out of 10, it is leadership. And I'm giving somebody a free book idea because I may not get around to writing it soon enough, but I literally do want to write a book that says, hey, you leaders, you are the problem. And it is fascinating to me because we've been on this road of like developing leaders for forever. For forever. Like, I mean, decades. We got Simon Sinek, we got Brene Brown, we got all these people. Everybody and their mama trying to tell leaders how they should lead better. We got leader capability and talent management involved to help leaders do the things. And then yet they are still the absolute problem when it is time for an organization to change. And they continuously say that they are interested in the people and the well-being of the people and making sure that people are prepared and that people understand what they need to do. And yet every bit of their action says the converse. And there can be lots of reasons why it's the converse, but it is not in alignment with what they articulate.
Wow. The reason why I'm saying wow, because we also talked about that even though, right, because your bread and butter is change management, is leadership. So even though people are paying you, I'm still shocked they're paying you to give them the knowledge. They're resistant to the knowledge. They're paying you to.
So the Bible says my people perish because they reject knowledge, not because they don't have the knowledge and not because the knowledge wasn't offered, but they actively reject knowledge. Actively. That is not just for the Israelites, the 12 tribes. It is universal principle. And yeah, it is one of the reasons why consulting firms continue to grow. Deloitte, Booz Allen, IBM, Accenture, everybody, they have grown to billions and billions of dollars, not just because they might possibly do things right, but predominantly because clients don't listen. And there's a lot of work to clean up.
Wow. Because clients don't wish. So, okay, so I'm going to go into this because I'm looking at this through the lens of right now. Um, leadership is in political, but also leadership is in a parent. And I say that because we've all had a parent, right? And at one time, that parent was leading us and guiding us, for better, for worse.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yep.
Now, there were some of us who had a type of personality or type of knowing that we were like I'll use myself as an example. I was like, I might just take that consequence because I'm not
Yeah.
going that way.
Right.
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 And there's some of us who will follow the leader off of the cliff.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as leadership, if I'm thinking of just the average person, is it based on ego, or is it based on, is it fear based, or what is the dynamic that you see?
I think it's all of the above, right? I think it's all of the above. I think so when I look across my life, and I'm sure probably you too, when you look across your life, you can learn as much from a horrible leader as you can from a great leader. Now,
That's true.
I will say across my life, I can count how many wonderful, fantastic, amazing leaders I've had on two fingers. And I've been in my career
Mm.
for 25 years. So, um, and the rest of the people were marginal at best or abysmal at worst.
She said marginal at best and abysmal. Okay, so I'm asking you a question that is just like, it is so vague, and it is so, we've heard it a million times. It's ridiculous. But according to your experiences, what makes a good leader then?
So I think a person who is transparent,
Oh, you asked
fundamentally.
for a really
Oh,
child.
well, I'm
Okay.
just, hey, I mean, I think if you ask a lot of people, because it's not about the news, right? I think when you join an organization or
Mhm.
even politically, right? So whether you're talking about professionally, politically, in marriage, relationship, whatever the case is, right? I think
Mhm.
everybody is fully aware that tough times will come, right? Like that's an like I don't think anybody's living in so much of a la la land that they just think it's going to be smooth sailing 24/7, 365, right?
Mhm.
But the issue is that knowing that tough times come and that you have to navigate waters that are murky, waters that are tumultuous, um, who would you rather navigate that with? Someone who can share as much transparency as they can about what is going on and why it's going on and how it's going to affect you and what the thinking is around it and how we might be able to mitigate and bringing you in to help solution and get your feelings and your feedback, or the person who basically keeps you at arm's length and you out here wondering what in the world is going on and they refuse to give you any information, and the information that they do give you is
Xfinity.
faulty, right? Look at Centerpoint. I don't think anybody, if we look at the Centerpoint thing from the hurricane, which both you and I incurred, your incurrence was a little shorter than my incurrence, but whatever. Um, if you look at how Centerpoint led through that, and I use the word lead really loosely, right? It was not that people in the Houston area didn't expect their power to go off. There was a hurricane. We kind of know power goes out when the hurricanes happen. The problem was that it was radio silence from Centerpoint for about 48 hours after power went out. Like nobody had anything, to the point to where people were using the Whataburger app to determine where power was at. If a Whataburger was open on the Whataburger, you'd be, oh, people were going to that Whataburger try to get them a double Whataburger and some air conditioning. Right. So, and every time you called, you asked, there was a press conference, whatever the case may be, no one really gave you salient information. It was all a bunch of finger pointing and no real description of what the process was going to be and how they were going to move through the process, how they were prioritizing, what they were thinking, like none of that, and no visibility into what their approach was and where they were going, right? So again, that to me is that's what transparency resolves.
Okay.
Right. So when you're transparent, so that's the first thing. So I'm not saying that I'm not saying your leader needs to be your best friend or anything like that. But I think when you have leadership, um, and I'll give you one example. I have an uncle who was a very high executive in one of the consulting firms, very beloved by people. And I remember going to one of his um, gatherings, and there were a lot of people there, several of which who had been fired by him. There were a lot of people there. Some people, I shouldn't say a lot, but there were people in the crowd who had been fired by him and still absolutely adored him. Absolutely adored him as a person. And the reason was because he delivered the news with empathy, right?
Okay.
So he empathized with the fact that, hey, we had to make these decisions, whether it's for financial reasons so that the business can go on, whether it's because you didn't perform well, but let me detail why and let me see how I can help you do something else. So he was empathetic, he was transparent, he left himself available for people to, come back to him, to continue the relationship that they had, to seek mentorship, to whatever the case may be, right? That says a lot to people when you're leading them, right? So transparency, empathy is really important, and not just paying lip service to stuff. Again, people know that businesses lay people off. That's
Right.
that's understood. It happens. Economic cycles happen, all sorts of things. And companies make decisions in order for the company to continue on. We are going to get rid of 10% of our workforce because the other 90% we need to do things. Great. Okay, how do you deliver that news? I've been in organizations that have done it where people who were with the company for 30 years had security guards standing next to them while they gathered their goods and products and were walked out the door in a very humiliating fashion. And I've had other companies that, shared the news with you, gave you the day off. So you left your stuff, but you also then left, right? And they gave you the option for them to mail your stuff to you or whatever. It was a one-on-one message delivered by your manager with HR. And there have been companies that we've seen in the news who delivered it via email, like the people who woke up one day on Twitter from Twitter and was like, "We got an email saying we got a job no more," right? Again,
Okay.
leadership. So I will say it again. Hey, leaders, yes, you are the problem, and the fact that we've had this for decades is fascinating to me of how poor leadership continues to be, and it's overwhelming when you start looking at companies' engagement scores, when they do enterprise-wide engagement surveying and things like that, leadership never scores off the charts. Never. There is never like a 85 percentile rating where leaders overwhelmingly are fantastic in most organizations, in especially not the large ones, the Fortune 2000.
Wow.
I mean, think about it, right? With the Houston School District. So, Mike came in, right? Mike came in with an iron fist. He had no rationale for his iron fist. He just was assigning orders, period. He didn't talk to nobody. He didn't listen to nobody. He didn't ask nobody for no feedback. He was isolated as a leader to his little group of whomever he thought was important to him, which most of them people had absolutely no experience inside of a school district or a school itself. Like, all of that sets, and as you can see, a lot of teachers are like, this dude is crazy and I'm going to go somewhere else and all this other stuff, which might have been his plan all in all. But if he had just said, hey, we need to have a 20% attrition rate this year, whoever want to sign up should go. Like, even if you do that, that's better than the approach he took. So again, poor leaders, very poor leaders. And because they continue to lead poorly, I continue to have a job.
So you said transparency and empathy. You have one more because I like a top three.
You like the top three?
Mhm.
So transparency, empathy, and genuineness, authenticity, for both themselves and for you.
You know what's so surprising about this? Because I'm sure in a lot of our minds, my mind, a lot of people's minds, as we go through the rigmarole of needing jobs or working, we're looking at, I don't have this degree or I don't have this. You're naming these three things are character. This is character you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. That's what it boils down to. It don't matter whether you have 22 degrees or no degree. It literally has to do with your character.
Wow. And to hear you say that based on your experience, and because we listen to the Brene Browns and like I shake my head, and at the same time I can see that most of us, right, are on the busy bus or the struggle bus, right? You just need to get in and get out and take care of your business. But on your behest, our last talk, when we left the conversation saying maximize your power, we haven't yet maximized our power.
Right.
And talking about these 3 character traits to come forward. And I don't know, it just reeks of hope, right? It reeks of hope because that's something you can control. You can control whether or not you have these character traits. You can control holding people accountable who don't. Well, if you're self-aware, and I think if we
That's the
are,
fundamental issue. Most people are not self-aware.
and even if we're not self-aware, even because it is easier to look outside yourself, we can at least start to recognize, like you said, when others don't, and hold them responsible for it if they have some type of authority over us, right? At least recognize that it's supposed to be there. Is that fair? I don't know.
I mean, it's certainly fair. I just don't know if it is likely to happen. But it's
And you said
definitely,
you can't really control. Are you saying either you have it or you don't?
I mean, you do. You do. I mean, I think your character is something that existed from the beginning of time. Not your personality. I think people ebb and flow into their personality, right? I can be extroverted today, introverted tomorrow. I can be someone who wants to be the life of the party, someone who, right, all those things. So personality is one thing, but I think your character, I think that's an ingrained thing from almost probably from your inception.
You sound like a who are those people? Predestiny.
Somewhat. I mean, I just think there
Trauma will do a job on you, Natalie. Trauma will do a job.
trauma will do a job on you, but I also think there are people who, despite their traumas, like I look at I look at my mom and even my dad to some extent. And you know, despite everything that they went through, right? Because they grew up in a segregated South. My dad, for example, was drafted to Vietnam.
We can give a moment of silence just right there because I was going to my kids the other day and trying to understand why their grandparents is the way they are, and I was like, see, when they were 16 and 17, they were told they had to go kill some people, okay,
Who they
and they
didn't
were looking at
know.
me like a horror story, like what?
People they did not know, people who they had never talked to a day in their life, none of that, right? Yeah, and then my dad had like a horrible upbringing. Like he was basically on his own from when he was like eight. Basically, from when he was like eight. Both of his parents rejected him, the whole nine. Really bad story. We'll say that for another episode. But when you look at all of that, and then you're a black man in America, um, he could have been a completely different human being. He could have been somebody who had no care, no concern, who was absent for his children, who, all the things, right? And he chose for that not to be the case. I think it's a character thing. I look at my husband and I think about the things that he had to endure growing up from that no side. Um,
Another moment of silence.
Another moment of silence for the people on the
All
notes.
kind of shade. Another moment.
Right, with two F's, no. Yeah, he saw a lot as he was growing up. And you've met my husband, like the human being that he is, like the capacity of empathy and love and caring and all the things. He could have been somebody different, but I just think that's his character. I don't think anything that he could have done would have changed any of that.
Oh, look at you glowing even when you
I mean,
talk about it.
it's just, the same thing with my mom. I mean, I think, people have who they are
Mm.
inherently, right? And again, you might get a little bit of deviation. There might be an anomaly or something like that. But I think for the most part, your character is your character. I think if you're a person who thinks that manipulating is the way to get ahead, then that's what you're gonna do. That's your character. You're a manipulator. You lie, you cheat, you whatever, and you can try to course correct as much as possible, but it is like an addiction of sorts, and you have to put all the 12 steps in place and fight diligently to try to undo that character flaw.
Yeah, there are some. I do agree. I are some bents. I won't name any names, but I do have a child who is. I think it's come through the family line because I'm like, this is like so and so. That lying is just so easy for them. It's like it's just so easy. But at the same time, so was somebody close to them in their life. So, but yes, you can see. Okay, this was the lawyer and the banker because that truth is really fuzzy right there. They can go either way with them, but this one they'll cry. They will spill the beans and tell everybody. Right? Can't be an FBI informed, right? So
Right.
you can see right away who's
Mm-hmm.
what, and then you do the job of trying to shape, but ultimately, the character's a character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can't see people's bent. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean,
This one don't need to teach. I got one who don't ever need to be a teacher. That's all I'm saying. Mm-mm, mm-mm. No, he'll kill you before he teach you. But yes, and you know what's crazy? I think that self-awareness is necessary, that truth, because like I told somebody, I said, if you want to know the state of your society, ask a pre-K teacher, ask a
Mhm.
kindergartner. We
Oh
see it.
yeah.
This one's molesting everybody. If this
Right.
no one intervenes, he's shooting up the school. If no one intervenes, right? We can see it.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah,
Yes. I
you can.
agree. I
And say,
agree.
oh, this is leading. This one's leading the pack already. Because they will. They'll all of a sudden that 3-year-old will gather all the other 3-year-olds, right? For better or for worse,
Better for
right?
worse.
You can see those right away. You can.
Yep.
You're right.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think, and I think that's probably fundamentally the big issue with leadership is that there's the argument of whether you can be taught to be a leader or whether it's inherent. And, again, maybe there are a couple of people who were able to do the work to become the leader, but I honestly think it is an inherent trait to a human as to whether they have the ability to capture people's attention, the ability to bring enough charisma, the ability to be transparent, to be genuine, all of those things.
Okay. Then I can see that. Now how this is what I don't understand, and maybe because I'm a little different. When that person, what I've never understood is the blind following, right? Just because we have leaders, why are we all doing what this person says when we know this is not the way it's supposed to be done? Why are we just going off the cliff? I'm not jumping for you.
I'm not going off the cliff.
So
I've
everybody
many of
still has a
rebellions.
you'll be in rebellion. You'll be
Cliff.
the brain heart. Oh, oh.
Anyway,
So
I
you have your leaders, but where's that check and balance, right? They're supposed to keep them, him, her in check.
well, I
Can it
think
be all leadership?
it's probably a mix of a lot of things, right? Because again, like I just saw a special. I shouldn't say I saw the whole special. I started watching a special and then I was like, I know how this ends. I'm gonna move on. About Jim Jones and Guyana. And all the people who followed Jim Jones to the
Oh,
island.
Jim Jones.
Yeah, Jim Jones to the island and then drunk the Kool-Aid. Like at no point in my life my life, am I the person who is fit to give away all of my assets to you? First of all, to you. That's the first thing. Not like, oh, give it to the poor out there. And like he wanted the assets for himself. He wasn't like, y'all, we should all just take our goods and donate them to wherever, and then we leave. He was like, first of all, y'all go sell your stuff, give me the money.
Oh,
Give
I
me
didn't
your
know that.
stuff. Yeah, he was collecting the things. And people were like turning over their homes to him, their everything, all the stuff. Which is typical for cult leaders. And so,
Wow.
I
That
just
blind leadership worship.
blindly, yeah,
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know, to your point, I don't understand that mindset.
That
So
is a program of us. I literally saw on Black Home Educator. She's on Instagram. It is a black, as far as I know, she is a black woman who's come from Section 8, is married, and she has accumulated 46 acres in Wyoming or something, right? Like her and her husband teach financial literacy, and she put up a post and she showed a video of Cindy Trim. Are you aware of Cindy Trim, or do you know Cindy? Okay. The only thing I know about Cindy Trim is she is a televangelist and she's got some wonderful YouTube prayers. So if you don't know what to say in a prayer, then I've known her for her prayers. She has done interviews, but I don't know anything else about her, right? I think I dropped off after Juanita Bynum. So I don't know of any other
okay.
new televangelist. However, she showed a video of her, and she was asking people, and it might have been a Black woman conference because that's all I saw, to give her money. So everybody rushing up, giving her like 100, and then she was like, "I need a couple people to give me $100. I need $1,000." People, and I'm sitting here like, how do I get that right? I'm sitting there like, just get, like I need to get myself together. But the woman who did the post was like, "What is going on with us? Like most of us have issues in our community where we're not stable, financially stable. We've talked about that. But there is this program in a lot of us that because someone says so, right? This will get me closer to my salvation that I need." And I put a link down there of W.E. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois did he did a report from 1883, I think, to 1963 about the condition of the Black church. I put that link on there because it ain't changed. It's the same. He had the same complaints.
Yes.
Same complaints. And so I was looking at that and I thought, okay, she's a leader, right? And at the same time, we get locked into these belief systems that destroy us in the process because they can't leave without your agreement unless they imprison you and slave you, which has happened, right?
Yes, it has. Yes, it has.
But
Leadership resource.
right, but if the prison is in the mind, like this dude said, right, we forgot to decolonize our minds, right? We're out of chains, we forgot to decolonize our minds. So maybe all of this, Black and white, is the belief that, or like you said, a lack of awareness of how our minds are still conditioned in that type of slavery where we have to comply, we have to do because someone way up there outside of me has all the answers. And if it's a job, a lot of times, right, you just want to keep the job. Keep your head down, right? Okay, keep your head down, don't make a scene, say less, right? That's what I was taught growing up with my parents. Just
yeah,
don't make eye contact, don't be the only one,
right.
because it was about just being alive,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's about being alive and getting home safe and having food on the table.
Right.
So
Well, and I think some of it is also abdicated responsibility, right? That like it is a lot easier if I can if I believe that there is something else that is to be blamed for the consequences that exist in my life, right? So
what do you mean?
um I know, right? So, if I can, say that I gave this pastor $1,000 and sold my blessing when my blessing doesn't come, I may not recognize that it's me. Right? My blessing didn't come because, oh, I need to sow some more money, or oh, it's that church, or it's, oh, God's not ready for me to have it yet, or like all the things, right? With very minimal or no true introspection as to why you are where you are and what is the role that you have played. Like, it's very easy to find the role that others have played. That's very, very, that's very, very easy. Right. And, um, being able to identify, okay, what, if anything, right? But usually there's some level of responsibility that cuts across multiple things, including yourself. What are the things that I haven't done, need to do, need to change, should be, like all of those things. And people are very weary to have those types of conversations with themselves and to take blame. And I'll give you a good example. It's one of the reasons why I love my cardiologist. So, because I like people who have very frank, transparent, keep it real conversations. I don't need people floating around the edges and all this other mess. Like, let's just say it, put the data points out there, and let's talk, whatever. So, according to various stats, I have cholesterol that is borderline high, right? According to the standards that we go by today. So my cardiologist, he was like, we really need to, this was like a year ago. He was like, we really need to put you on, whatever it is that pharmaceutical companies tell you will lower your cholesterol level. And I was like, I don't really want to do that. I was like, let me just, work out. I'll figure out my diet situation, whatever the case may be. And, we'll see if we can get it down from there. It was like, okay. So 6 months went by, I go back. My level's pretty much still the same. He's like, you really need to, we really need to put you on these whatever drugs. I was like, I am not comfortable. I was like, I don't know what the long-term side effects are. I was like, whatever. And he was like, okay, well, I'm just telling you because, should you drop dead running in Memorial Park, they're going to call me because they found my business card on you. And I was like, fair enough. I was like, but I still want to take care of it on my own. I'll get some supplements, all the things. So recently I went back to him and my numbers are still the same. And he's like, so your numbers are still the same. I'm going to say that you need to get on these. I'm like, I'm not getting on. He's like, well, you clearly aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I was like, no, you're right. I'm not. I was like, I really haven't changed my diet much. I was like, I kind of started walking, but not really consistently. I was like, so I had all the things. And he was like, yeah, but you need to, if you're not going to do the thing that you need to do so that we can see if it gets it down, then you need to do this. And I was like, but I don't want to do that over there. I just want, he was like, but it's clear that you're not going to do that. I was like, it is clear that I'm probably not going to do that, but I also don't want to do that. Always have
Love
these.
the transparency.
We
Yes,
do, right? We always have these wild conversations where he is like, you are the reason why we are here in this point in time. These numbers are here because you are not doing things. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's true. I'm not. And there are people who will go in there and not be able to have a real conversation. They will want to say, oh, well, I was at work and I got the whatever and all the things and I couldn't whatever and all the stuff. And it doesn't really matter. The bottom line is, you didn't do the things that you were supposed to do. You didn't do option A and you're not doing option B. And that's all on you because nobody else can do it. It's only you. It is only you.
Only you. Leadership.
Leaders. It is your fault, leaders. You are the problem.
I love that because okay, so you met okay, so I filled this out for you because I love top fives now. Transparency, empathy, authenticity, self-awareness, and willing to take responsibility.
Accountability, that is true. Yes.
Accountability.
Accountability.
Okay, accountability. Yeah, that's like therapy. That's the reason why therapy exists, because this is the work.
This
This
is
is
the
this is
work.
the holy grail.
This is the work. This is the work. And it's not, I'm not saying that it's easy work, but I think the sooner you come to terms with it, um, the better it is. Like it is, again, back to the client situation. It is fascinating to me how disconnected and delusional clients can be about the current state of their affairs. Like you can have scores that are in the tank and from your organization, and they'll do all the things to figure out what they need to do, what people want to hear, what people want to talk about, and then do nothing with that information. Absolutely nothing with it. They'll just be like, well, they said that, but, and I'm like, so you asked these people what they felt they needed, and then when they told you what they needed, you just decided that it wasn't relevant. that doesn't that doesn't really make sense.
You know what that reminds me of? Unfortunately, I'm thinking of two things, because in teaching, you're saddled with, at least K through 12 teaching, you're saddled with data points. I don't know if corporate's the same way, but they've changed the teaching model to where you're looking at the data points from the test scores instead of the actual little human. It's
Mm,
kind of exhibiting what the need is.
yep.
And it reminded me of, I had one child in the hospital, and I remember understanding, prepared of what that would probably look like. And so I got there at the very last minute. Like it was just time to push when I got there. And I remember I was at Woodlands Memorial. Yeah, I was at Woodlands Memorial. And when I got there, nobody talked to me. The only time they talked to me is when I was unwilling to do something. Like when I said, yeah, I'm not doing that. But I remember they just kept saying, oh, she's complete. And I learned that means the baby's here. Oh,
Okay.
she's complete. She's complete. And so they were trying to move me on a gurney to see how far along I was. And since it wasn't my first, I was like, oh, yeah, this is time. I ain't got to see nothing. I can push right now. It's time.
Right.
But she wanted to me to transfer myself during a contraction. And she kept saying it so much, I finally looked at her and said, wait. Right. And I was like, okay, I'm good. So when we got into the wherever baby delivery place, I noticed that everybody was looking at the monitors. They were looking at the monitors, but they weren't looking at me or talking to me. They're only directed to a machine. And I'm like, and because I teach a lot of disabilities, that is autism, I call. When you're on the autism spectrum disorder, I've had a lot of students who only pay attention, um, or males, period, who pay attention to the function of the thing and not the person. Right? We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the wheel, but we're
Yep.
not looking at the passenger.
Correct.
So I just realized this huge disconnect between, hello, I'm right here. So we're going
Yep.
to look at a monitor and
Yep.
not look at you. And
Correct.
when the monitor says you're okay, then you're
You
okay,
must be okay.
regardless.
Yeah, you're okay. Mm-hmm. You
And
don't
I
have
feel
no
like that.
fever. You're fine. You don't have a fever. You're fine. You go home later at night and die. And they be like, well, what happened? Well, they didn't have a fever. Okay, well,
I feel like that's what's this whole computer age is all, oh, we're just going to look at the machine, and the machine's going to connect to our soul somehow and tell us
mm-hmm.
what
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
That is, and don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of data. I am thrilled with data. I love it. I think it is a guiding force in everything and the decisions that get made. I love it. I also know you have to balance it um,
Mm.
because one, data can tell you anything that you want it to tell you. That's the first thing.
Ooh.
And you have to look at the qualitative and quantitative sides of things because there are reasons beyond and factors beyond what the data is saying and the only way to get that is to tap into the human element of things.
Ooh. So context. Is that what you're saying?
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay. The human, yeah.
And
That's
that's
okay. So I love that. That
doctors to recommend something. You don't know what the question was when they asked them what to recommend the thing. 2 out of 3 doctors recommend Advil over Aleve. Well, what was the question you asked them for Advil over Aleve?
true.
I can certainly I can create a question that gives me 2 out of 3 doctors advocating for one over the other.
I think one thing that you also said was significant was that you have an actual conversation with your
Mhm.
doctor
Yeah,
versus coming in writing scripts. Here you go.
right.
Right? He has to know you. Like you have to know someone on a certain level to have the conversation that y'all had.
Correct.
And sad to say, a lot of people either give their power over to their doctors
Yes.
and allow their doctors that relationship where I just authoritarian, I just tell you what to do.
Hmm.
Um, and don't demand they're human to be involved. I'm a human, you're a human, we need to have this conversation.
Yep.
That's that's
Yep.
deep. Okay. Mm.
Yeah. And but people do that in relationships in general,
Relationships.
right? They don't want to have the conversation. Why? They'd rather put their own feelings on you, right? They'd rather say, "Oh, I know." It's like in marriages, you spent 20 years with somebody thinking that they loved getting flowers, and then somehow or another you learn that they hate flowers. But you spent 20 years every week you'd bring home flowers to your partner because you thought that's what they love because you love flowers and they must love flowers because I like flowers and flowers are pretty. Everybody loves flowers, right? Except for the people who don't like flowers. So
That's a
So
huge
instead of
disconnect.
asking a person, hey, what do you need, for me to do to support you in, feeling connected to me, to feeling like you're loved by me, instead of asking those types of questions, you just go ahead and make some random assumptions that are not validated, except through your own personal lens.
That sounds like every relationship, work,
Yes.
parent, child. Yeah, that sounds like yes, church, religious leaders.
Yeah. And I mean, I can tell you, I had a very different, as you know, very different upbringing. So there were very few assumptions that my mom made about me as a child. There are very few. I mean, when Martin and I got married, the first thing I did was I created a document, which we still have. And I was
Oh,
like,
look,
and the
you
document
tell.
said, I know the document was a list of things to do to show Natalie that you love her. I've always been a person who believed, like, just like with gifts, like people are like, and I used to have this fight with some of my best friends, and they would be like, I don't know why you give us birthday lists. They were like, I just think that's kind of disingenuous. Whatever I give you, you should appreciate. I was like, why would I appreciate something I don't like? If you give me a treadmill and I don't want to walk, okay, great. You just spend $800 on something that I don't like. Why would that doesn't make any sense. So no, I'm gonna articulate exactly the things that I like and don't like. They will be at varying price points so I'm not speaking for your wallet. And you can make a decision based on these things. That seems to me to be the better approach than for you to go off trying to shop for me and you have no clue as to what you think I like. And now you done spent your money, and I guarantee you I'm not the one to use it. I will regift that bad boy right on back to you in the same day. I'll be like, thank you very much. I think you can get better use out of this than me. So I don't want you wasting your resources like that. And I think people think those are like uncomfortable conversations, just like women who say they've never had an orgasm. I'm like, are you communicating to your partner? Have you told them like what needs to happen for you to reach that point in your relation, your experience? And that's because I'm like, have the conversation. Be like, hey, look, I know every time you do this, you think it's great. And maybe it's great for you, but it's not great for me. So you can get 2 minutes of that, and then I'm gonna need 2 minutes of something else. Like, have the conversation. It's fascinating to me how many people don't have the conversation, to your point.
Don't their needs met. Well, not ultimately. I think one of those reasons is because it pulls you when you start asking questions, it pulls you into a reality that you may be uncomfortable with. You may have to realize, and this happened to me. in several parts of my life that I had to, if I want to make my life different, if I want to live, I need to make some changes. You may realize that your level of awareness puts you in a situation with people who don't have the capacity to love you like you need to be loved, who may not care. And I think those are some very painful realities for people to deal with, because then you have to make a choice. Am I going to ignore this and go back to sleep? Or am I going to change? Right? Or
So
change you?
do you think it's better to
Change
find
me.
do you think it's better to find that out sooner than later? Like, because like, would you want to spend 20 years with somebody and
People
then
do.
make the discovery when you could have made that discovery in the first 2 months of knowing somebody? Or in my case, the first day, because Martin and I had some very real conversations on day one. He was not super excited with my conversations on day one, but that was what we was gonna do. So I'm gonna tell him.
And he's still like, y'all still going. It was like, you're the evidence it worked out. Um, I would like to say, unfortunately, especially in our culture, escapism is just something that we do. People escape. People
But
escape
can
into
you
all.
escape from your life? Like, I just want,
Yes,
even with
yes,
drug
I do.
addicts and stuff, I'm like, I know like the reason why a heroin addict is a heroin addict
Look
is
at
because
me.
they're trying to
Yes.
escape from something. But I'm just like, you can
It's your
you
life for
can't
them.
live in a perpetual state. At some point, you're gonna come out of the fog and still have to deal with it, at least until the
So
next time you can escape back into the fog.
I'm not only a witness, I'm a client. You
I am the
can
president.
I'm the you can escape indefinitely into your grave.
Okay.
You don't have to wake up here. The drugs are so, and when I look, let me say this. The drugs, let me specify. I'm talking about real drugs, I'm talking about Netflix, I'm talking about ice cream, I'm talking about drama, I'm talking about sex, I'm talking about bad jobs. You can spend your entire life escaping into situations where it's never your fault, where it's always somebody else's problem, and you just pop a pill the next morning. You can keep popping that pill until you're just not here to pop pills or drink, or like you literally.
Or shop or gamble or whatever.
Yes,
Okay.
you can do that your entire life here.
That is
Hence the
disheartening
problem.
and
It
sad.
is, and it's a lot. It is more people than you can imagine, because I had parents, and God bless them, they're older now, but I had parents, and let me preface by saying, not unlike yours, civil rights, Jim Crow, right, war, all this stuff, who also had parents, um, who they could choose, well, default of trauma, they chose a certain reality to live in, like a lot of Gen Xers talk about, and I'm part of that group, where their reality included you, but not really,
Mm,
right? Included you,
okay.
but not really.
Okay.
So I say that because it can be so painful to wake up and take responsibility for your creation that it can be unbearable. And I say that because the waking up part can include you having a heart attack, meaning you were so distraught, you were so panicked that you end up having a heart attack. The way people wake up to their life and look at, and I'm talking about some real deep stuff now, for you
Mhm.
to recognize that your husband, your son, or somebody's molesting your daughter, and you waking up to that and actually dealing with that, no, you rather drink, you rather deny, right? You might go right back to sleep. You
That's
don't
so
know what else to do, like to wake up and realize that this is so horrific, or I am so dead inside. Some people fall into cancers, right? Their nervous systems can't take the reality, or their nervous systems aren't primed for reality. Like, you have to prime that nervous system for reality. And if you spent, let's say, your childhood in escape, and you're now an adult, you have to take yourself in stages and wean yourself off of drugs, denial, shame, guilt, or your physicality. You feel like you are already dying. So I say that not as people escape because, they're weak. No, I'm saying that because they're trying to live, but they don't know what to do with all that pain.
That's
They
fair.
don't know what to do with that. And there are a lot of, if you run to religion, unfortunately, that can be another form of escapism.
That can
And
be.
they
Yep.
don't know what to do with the pain either, right? They just, So I want to be empathetic there, and at the same time understand that it must be done though. Like
Yeah,
you avoid it in this life, you have to deal with it in the next.
that's correct.
You
You're just
can't
gonna
avoid
keep
it.
reliving the same little tragic situation all the time. Yeah.
But we do have the ability to find people who have been there and pull us out. But just for my own self, to recognize how God has stepped in and taken me from point to point, regardless of the amount of pain. But that amount of pain, I can't, it's unimaginable. And I say this because I did it without drugs. For me, like, I feel like my default, my present state is spacey, right? Like I'm very sensitive spiritually. So I don't want to be any higher than I feel like I naturally am.
Mm-hmm.
But I hurt my hip. I've rehabilitated myself without drugs because I couldn't handle the prescription drugs too powerful. But one time it was so difficult, my hip flexor, that this doctor, she prescribed me like these 4 pills. And this is why I was teaching last year. And when I tell you the pills she gave me, not only did I not feel pain, I felt perfect. Like
Interesting.
I felt like I could be God if I wanted to.
See, and I feel like that every day, but okay.
But when I say that, I say I'm talking about I have no need for anything to tell me anything. Like, I went to some other altered state of ego, but I felt like, what is the point of believing in anything? Like, I am the be all.
That's
I don't know
kind of
how to
how I
explain.
feel all the time, literally all the time, all the time. I literally,
Man,
I'm kid you not.
I
I
need
kid you
that drug because I was in, when I tell you I was in no discomfort, because I'm always in some form of discomfort. I
not. Yeah.
was in actual no discomfort anywhere.
Do you think though,
Anywhere.
did that sensation to you feel like an escape?
Yeah, because let me tell you why about my personality. I was
Okay.
supposed to be doing physical therapy on my hip while I was right. The point was take away the pain so you could do the work. I was like, I'm not in pain. Will I ever be in
Don't
pain?
need to do the work.
I didn't do jack shit. I was like trying to figure out how to get more drugs. If I could
That's hilarious. Okay. Okay.
work,
Okay.
who needs work? Like, I was going there with, who needs work? Do I even need to work? Like, I was like, honey, I had a talk with myself. Like, there was a lapse of time when I didn't take it, and I came back to myself and I said, yeah, you need to, like, I don't think, yeah, whatever personality I got, I was convinced being under the bridge with me and my kids was just fine, right? We was
That's
good.
hilarious.
I was good. Like, when I tell I was good, I don't need food, I don't need water. I I don't need anything. I can sit right here and die here. I was good.
Okay.
And I was like, there's drugs out here. Like, if that's a
Well, yeah,
prescription
that's
drug,
what people be claiming. They be out there on intervention, the A&E intervention, child, because it be now. This is the thing I don't get because like, so when I had surgery in October, and I've had lots of different surgeries for different reasons, for different things. And normally pain medication is always the problem. But the reason it's the problem is because none of it ever works. People were
oh
like,
no, this works.
here is the stuff we give to cancer patients. I was like, first of all, y'all need to apologize if this is what you giving to cancer patients because this stuff don't work. Here is all the oxy things, none of it worked. In this
What?
last, none of it. It never works. If it's working, I'm like, it's not alleviating that, and I don't know what we're doing. The only thing that happened this last time and it was the last of the last straw that they were like, when the nurse came in, she was like, I don't know what else to give you. We've gone through all like whatever the classes of drugs are. She was like, we've gone through all of them. Like we gone through all of them. And I think the last one was Demerol. And
Oh,
yeah, it was Demerol. And I was like, okay, well, let me see what that do. We'll see what happens, right? So they gave me put the little thing into my IV. And I was like, oh, okay, my little pain is gone from a 8 to like a nothing. I was like, okay, this is great. But I didn't feel like I needed that. Like I was in the hospital for a couple of days and I didn't feel like that brought me someplace that I wasn't euphoric from it. I just recognized that I could get up out of the bed and walk and move around or whatever, but I didn't get any sensation of like euphoria or happiness or like this was the place to be. Now I tell you what, laughing gas is great, so they should sell that over the counter.
laughing gas works for
Laughing
you?
gas. Every time I've gone to the dentist and they had to have dental work or something, they had to give me laughing gas. I'm like, this stuff right here, this is great. But it's supposed to create euphoria. That's the point of it. But other stuff, I'm like, I don't know what y'all addicted to out there on these streets, but this
Baby,
codeine,
look, I'm just one
codeine,
now.
Tylenol threes, all that. I'm like, no, I don't, none of this.
Oh
I think
no, not
something
that, not that.
to
I'm talking about,
do.
okay, one of them was, I don't even know how to say it. Diclofenac sodium, diclofenac, baby. And then I had to take it with cyclobenzaprine, and there was one more I don't have, and I think God hid that one from me. But it was three. Was it four of them? It was, and I had to take them like two this day, one this day, two together. It was like this whole equation. And I
Okay.
was like, you know what? Let me tell you something. If I had a major thing going on, if these little prescriptions would hit me like that, I can't imagine. I can't I would sell children. I think I was at the step that I was about to sell some
Okay.
kids. I can
Okay.
see how this happened. I can.
Okay. See, and
I can.
when I was running marathons, my knees have been jacked up since track in high school, but um a doctor prescribed Celebrex for me for my knee
Is that
pain on
commercial?
the commercial. And I'm gonna tell you, if you got some joint pain, Celebrex is the one and the two. Let me just tell you, I had Megan the Stallion knees with the Celebrex. There was no pain. Like normally, after I would finish a long run, I had to go to one of my aunt's houses. I would sit there with ice packs if I could even bend my knee. Right, like that was a whole thing. So ask me why I kept running. You'd be like, well, why don't you just stop running the marathon? It's a whole different discussion. But I would be there with ice on my little knees, trying to ice it up. When I started taking the Celebrex, and I was only taking it like I would take it like 2 days before a long run, the day of the long run, and then I would use the rest of the week to not have anything. That stuff really does work for your joints. But again, even being joint painless, whateverness, I still didn't feel like I was not at the point where I was ready to sell myself or anybody else.
You
To
stay right there. Stay right there. You are blessed, and I'm serious. Stay right there, okay? Because some of us don't need a lot, and some of us push our own boundaries. But I'm telling you, it exists, and that's the
I'm sure
scary
it
thing.
does. It's people out there. It's people out there.
There's people out there who will do whatever they have
It's
to
true.
to to get it. And I'm like, wow. When it comes to that, yeah, okay. So I'm just for a little bit. It's sort of like, because this has been my experience. It's sort of like I had this husband, and I knew something was missing. I just didn't know what was missing, but I knew something was missing. And then I got with the other baby daddy. And let me tell you,
Realize
there
what
wasn't nothing going on with that. Good D. I was not prepared. I was not prepared. My body had no defenses for good D. It had none. You hear me? Now that was the ultimate drug that almost ruined my life. That right didn't have no defenses for it. Mm-mm. Didn't
you
have
know,
none.
it's so
Mm-mm.
fascinating.
Mm-mm.
I do not have, I don't have anything that I think. Now, I do think if like from like an A&E
Oh wait,
intervention
I can't hear you.
perspective. Oh,
Is something
really?
going on? Oh, okay. Now I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
I do think from like an A&E intervention perspective, if somebody was like if I came home one day and my whole family is sitting in the living room and they were like, Natalie, you can no longer have any kind of sugar or sugar byproduct or anything. We need to rush you off to this rehab detox center and you can never touch it ever again. I think I would just be like, Jesus, take me on home. Just Enoch me because I
Okay.
don't understand the point of being
Well,
here,
there
right?
you go. There you
Right.
go.
But so yeah, so in that case, I do, but that's more of like an intervention perspective, I feel like. Like I feel like if
Mhm.
someone had to intervene, then I get it. That's why when I watch the show and people walk in on a little heroin addict and they be like, well, before I go to rehab, I need to stop and get a hit. And I'll be like, okay, get your hit, girl. Just go on to rehab, whatever you need to do to get to rehab. Um, but I don't know. I'm just not, I don't like, even with that though, I don't like, some
Have you
people.
ever been without sugar? Have you ever
Oh
been
yeah, I'm
without
sure
sugar?
I've done plenty of detoxes. Because in first, but you detox to retox, right? So I've done no sugar. I've done only produce. If it didn't grow out the ground in the way in which it came, you can't eat it. So there was no rice because rice you got to process like nothing, right? You either pick it up out the store and can put it in your mouth, or you're not eating it. And I've done no
Have you done
sugar.
no sugar and no carbs
No
before?
sugar, no carbs. No, yes, I've done my fair share for extended periods. I even did collectively, me and Martin did a low carb vegan, unprocessed vegan experience where we were basically just eating out the produce section. There was nothing else. And
Oh, I can
it
do
was
watermelon.
mostly raw and whatever. So, because I am a firm believer that you need to check your brain. Like, so that's the story about the marathons, right? Like when I was running marathons, when I was doing the MS 150s, all of those things, I feel like as humans, my mom used to tell me this all the time when I would leave the house. And I didn't, when I was younger, I would hear it and I was just like, that sounds so crazy. And I don't even know what you're talking about. But she was like, control your mind so your mind doesn't control you.
That's fine.
Every day before I left the house, that's what she would tell me. Make sure you control your mind so your mind don't control you. And I was like, it is the epicenter of everything I do. How is it not going to control me? It's the thing that decides if my heart beats or not. Like, I'm like, I don't understand it. But then I started to get it because your brain can wander in numerous ways. And so I'm a firm believer that you've got to check yourself before you wreck yourself all the goddamn time. There was a time when I had a little small pint of Haagen-Dazs ice cream, and I was like, I'm gonna only eat this for dessert for the next 3 months. This has to last. So I was literally only having a teaspoon out of this pint every day.
Wow.
That was it. There was no other
Okay.
sugar involved, no other anything. That was it. Um, so yeah, so I do. And back in like you look at biblical times of like people fasted a lot and all of that. Like I do, I think I think there is a point in time regularly that you have to tell your body and your mind, hey, this is what we are going to do. And whether you like it or not, this is what we're going to do because otherwise, you just seem to be out here thinking you can do all the things. And I need to make sure you understand who is in control and where these boundaries come from and why they exist.
Ooh, I like that. It sounds like you have like this guttural self-discipline mechanism, maybe that has kept boundaries and kept you in check.
Potentially, I mean, it's just something I've always done. Like I've always been like, it's never the time to find out what your body and mind can do when it is absolutely needed in an emergency situation. That's just my
That's true.
firm belief on that. So, if ever there's a case when I need to run 50 miles, I know I have 50 miles in me to run. If I need to bike 200 miles, I got 200 miles to run. If I can only eat green leaves, I know I got green leaves in me to eat, right? So, like, I think you need to, I just think you need to show that you can exercise some discipline and that you don't, and it also speaks to like, as a people, I think as a Black people, one of our biggest things, and this ties to my whole children of Israel kind of thing, is we do not do well with delayed gratification. We are a people who are driven almost entirely by immediate gratification. And if we can't get it, if we can't get the new hot thing, if we can't, whatever, like we're oftentimes, I'm not saying all of us, but we do have our little side of us that's kind of showy and all the things and whatever. And I think you have to deny yourself to show that you can wait. I can wait. I can have delayed gratification. I'm not gonna die if I don't do this thing. I'm not gonna like all the things. And I think we struggle to do that.
Delay, but I think of that delay but not denied. I keep
Mm,
thinking of the civil rights, right? Um, because I think what makes us so lopsided in that area. This one dude explained this to me one time because I didn't get it. I was like, why are they buying this if they can't afford this?
mm-hmm,
And he was like, if you've been programmed or you think that you can't afford like to ever have the job you want or the house you want, and someone dangles this in front of you, whether it's nails, hair, I mean, whatever the thing that makes you feel better, chocolate
mm-hmm,
cake, whatever. Um, then you'll reach for that because your hope stops short of what you can obtain right now, like um what you can satisfy with yourself right now because you're starving. And I love the fact that you said you don't want to wait until it's an emergency to see what your body can do. But I think our community, even though we may look good, we have a lot going on, we achieve a lot, I think it's evident that a lot of us are starving. And so we make these immediate
mm-hmm,
transactions because soulfully we're starving. You know, we're not home. Like I love how you said last time that even though we achieve these things, it costs a lot with our health to belong, to be integrated, to right. We've made these negotiations in order to exist as we exist, but there's still a part of us that is just starving. You know,
mm-hmm,
that hunger there, and it's not going to be satisfied by, of course, anything material. But a lot of times, yeah, you might live in this big house, but you live in this big house where you might have this worry that you're not truly safe. But because what if one of the white folks get mad and call 911, right? So I think, I don't know, some of those histories, some of these realities, and I'll take a little break one moment because I did want to address this with you. Speaking of police, I unintentionally and intentionally, but unintentionally watched this black woman. I think she was my age or my mom's, I don't know, but she was at least 40 or 50, get shot in the head by cops.
the
I
woman
I
with the hot water.
I think I expected the video to be fuzzy. I expected it to cut off. I expected something. I didn't know that we were playing this whole thing. And because I really didn't understand what I saw, you know how it replays on
Mm-hmm,
social, it played again. And I was like, I just can't even, I couldn't comprehend several thousand things in that video. I
mm-hmm,
just could not, I couldn't comprehend the laughter before the gunfire
mm-hmm.
and how it, like, I could not comprehend that.
Yep, 0 to 60 real quick.
And I was like, part of me, right, the blame part of me, the old school survival part of me was like, why you got them in your house, right?
That's what
Why you got
I
them?
was like. Don't
Why
I
they in
tell
your house?
everybody right now, please don't ever call the police for me. Don't do it. I don't, I'm okay. I figured out.
I just couldn't figure out why they were in her house. I couldn't figure out why she
She
called the
called
police
them.
up.
She called them
But
because there was an intruder.
there was an, oh, she said there
She
was an
called them
intruder.
and reported an intruder. They showed up um to make sure that things were okay or whatever. So she let them in. And then what happened after that? I don't even I'm with you on that one. I'm like, I don't even understand what is happening. She called you. Why does it matter whether she got a hot pot of water? Like, I don't.
I
And
was so,
it went from a joke to a thing, and then we guns, and I was like, I don't get it. But yeah, she called because there was an intruder.
which led me to believe like both of their mental states were off. Everybody's mental state was off. When I saw that culturally, right, we've been taught certain things that come up. We've been taught what I teach my boys today. Certain we've been taught in those frequencies, if you will, right? They go out, my spidey senses go out. Even living here off Memorial, there's just certain things I realize that I do with them, say, I just do instinctual because I'm like, okay, people need to know who you are. Like I make sure that every place knows their face and this is my, and I'm
Right.
like, I'm sure other people don't do that, but
Oh, they do. They do. Because in our neighborhood, so we were the only Black couple in the neighborhood. And then after about a year of living in our neighborhood, another couple moved in. And on our Facebook page, the guy posted on the neighborhood Facebook page, he posted that, he was like, I just want to let everybody know that we moved into the neighborhood. I run in the mornings and in the evenings. I often run in a hoodie, even if it's hot outside, because I like to sweat. And sometimes I do compete in fitness competitions. And so it helps me lean out. But the fact that he had to post that on the neighborhood page is telling all by itself.
it's like it's those type of moments where I'm like, oh, that's when I'd rather sleep in a sense. I didn't want to see that. I don't want to be reminded of that.
Mhm.
Right. I could have done without that. It's easier for me to get mad at her for letting them in their house than
No,
necessarily.
than them shooting her for being in the house. Yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, it is
Let
jacked
in
up.
our tent, right?
I
Who
know
we
it's
let in
jacked up. It's jacked up that the victim don't get. I get it. It's jacked up that we go to the victim and we'll be like, what could the victim have done differently so that the victim didn't end up being the victim, right? And it's unfortunate, and it is the reality. Right. So it's the same thing with women. Like, I get it. You should be able to wear whatever you want to wear, including walking around butt booty naked if you want to on a construction site. You should be able to do that and not have to worry about anybody catcalling you, whistling at you, touching you, that you don't want any of all of that. And the reality of the situation is that's not reality.
Thank you. It's
Right.
not reality.
It's not reality. And so we can live in the world of what should be, or we can live in the world of what is. And as my grandfather used to say, if was a fifth, we'd all be drunk.
Natalie, oh my gosh, that is
Say it all the
right.
time. If was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. And he's right. You can if it away. If we just, if we could, if we would, if we should, if we. The bottom line is, it's not. So my husband should be able to take the dogs out.
Going into the merch, girl. That's going into the merch. If it was a fifth, we'd all be drunk. That's a nursery rhyme.
It is a nursery rhyme. It is a nursery rhyme. It is true. It is very true. Yeah. That if that were it, we'd all be drunk. I wish my husband could walk around at 3:30 in the morning with a hoodie on and walk the dogs outside in a metroplex, an urban area like Houston. And yet, I'm not convinced that 10 out of 10 he'll return home.
Yeah.
It is the reality. It's a sad reality, but it's one that if you don't factor it in, so yeah, I agree. She should have been able to call the police. She should have been able to go to the door with a gun on her hip with the police and still be fine. And the reality is that is not the case for us. So, agree that they need to be prosecuted, and we need to take the lesson and learn the lesson.
I'm like, hell. I think Instagram. Look, I
Um,
think they need to offer. counseling services. I did not see that. Man.
Not ready. I turned it off. The moment they drew their guns, I turned it off because I was like, what I'm not about to do is watch this woman get shot because I already know the ending.
Oh, yeah. That's last time that happened. It was I can't remember his name. Castile, whatever the cafeteria worker. I should
Oh
know his
yeah.
name, but that was a turning. I ended up leaving my church over. That was a big turning point for me. But I think I love what we're doing because again, she had her literal tent. We're talking about our big black tent, and we're talking about the capacity, the want to, the being compelled to be aware enough to make boundaries, maximize our power in this tent. And oftentimes we just don't have the boundaries up. We don't have the awareness. We're not at the point where we're completely fortified.
I will say we do. So I'm gonna give you an example, and I was really hoping that we would not have to talk about this today, but it is kind of the elephant in the room as we talk about a big black tent. We have the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Kamala Harris. Oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Every single person knows that that woman is not a Black American. Now, we can certainly call her a person of color, a woman of color, right? I give her that. But to coin her as a Black American and nowhere in her near-term lineage, now look, I don't know if 7 generations ago somebody got with somebody and whatever, but generation 1 and 2 and 3 in the immediate term ain't got nothing to do with Blackness.
I thought her daddy was Black.
Or American Black.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah.
So for us to have just decided she went to Howard University and pledged AKA and therefore she must be Black is the equivalent of telling Bill Clinton he was Black because he was playing a saxophone.
We're starving. We're starving yet again.
And the problem is that we will fight you. I mean, like, I'm looking at these comments in social pages. People are 10 toes down on the fact that this woman is a Black American woman. I mean, they are standing on business, 10 toes down. And I'm like, no, and no. No. Happy to call her a woman of color because that's what she is. Happy to have a woman of color potentially running for office if we want to add that level of diversity. Forget the politics and the policies and all that. But if you want to add some flavor of diversity to the candidate slates, great. But what I'm not about to do is have you decide that she is a Black American. That's not happening.
So what is it about our tent that we seem to be trapped in and stuck in and don't necessarily benefit from that other people excel out of, like come out swinging, propelling themselves into the stratosphere of success?
Because they not Black. They come into the tent. They come into the tent to get the support that they need. And then they leave the tent and go off and be all the success they wanted. They be all they can be. As the army.
Make the Manny, and then they. So once again, perhaps not. This is going to be interesting on several thousand levels. I even heard this one person say they don't even believe there's going to be an election for the first time ever. They just may not be an election because they have to agree on her vice president, right?
So the process, as I have read, through both DNC manifesto and various political interpretive analysis, is that anybody at this point can raise their hand and say, I want to be a candidate for consideration.
Oh.
They just have to get enough signatures. They have to get, so So I think people believe that the primaries determine things. The primaries do not determine things. The primaries essentially just give a signaling to the delegates who go to convention, either the Republican convention or the Democratic convention. The primaries signal and say, okay, delegates, this is who the majority of people wanted, right? And those delegates will pledge themselves to whomever, right? They'll say, okay, I pledge that at the convention, I'm gonna be a delegate for Trump, or I'm gonna be a delegate for Biden, or I'm gonna be a delegate for Goofy, whoever, right? Like they pledge themselves. So then at the convention, they basically still have to go through the process of making sure that those delegates are aligned and are supporting that candidate and are going to vote for that candidate. And you got to get so many delegates in order for you to be the official nominee of the ticket for that party.
Okay.
So right now, anybody can go around the DNC, and if they can get signatures from delegates who pledge that they would be their delegate, they can be a part of the process to be considered for the top of the ticket. Now, I think Joe Biden already had some 3,000 delegates or something like that already. But his delegates are not auto-assigned to her. He endorsed her, and so he's cueing them to say, hey, if you would pledge your support to me, I hope you would pledge your support to her because I'm endorsing her. But in essence, every one of the delegates who had pledged to Biden are now free agents. They can go with whoever they want to go with. They don't have to go with Kamala.
Oh. Oh,
Right?
so we're waiting to see who else might jump in the ring?
Well, I mean, it's all about how well the DNC can control the ring, right? And how many handshakes and backroom deals they want to do to make sure that nobody else attempts to step up to have a because no one wants to have a contentious convention. You really want to go into convention saying, we have our nominee. This is just a formality. The delegates are all in line. We got the numbers we need. We're good to go. No one wants to go into a convention and have to have multiple rounds of delegate voting and getting them to get it and getting the candidates to have to get appeals and all this other mess. Like nobody really wants that. But in the DNC's case, because the person who was at the top of the ticket, at least informally, has stepped down. So they have a process to go through. Now, the question is, are delegates who were behind Biden also going to get behind Kamala automatically? Or are there going to be other candidates who step up, seek delegates, and are able to enter the process of having a vote cycle of who can get the majority of delegates?
Ah, okay. So they have to rush that process. And then I heard even once they approve whoever's going to run for president, Congress has to approve the vice president. Is that so? That means they have to agree.
I don't know if that is the case. That would be the case, I think, if because we're still in the DNC process. I would think
Okay.
whomever comes to the top of the ticket will elect their running mate.
Okay.
But if now I will tell you this, if because Biden has stepped down, and I think there was some whispers of this, and he mentioned health issues, there could be now what they might have been talking about was invoking the 25th Amendment, right? Where basically your cabinet comes together and says, hey, we don't think you can lead. We don't think you should be in this place. We're basically saying you can't be president anymore, which then the vice president would become the president. And then you then have to figure out who, but that's normally a succession thing. So yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
interesting.
This is very, very interesting. It's not disappointing.
Action packed to the end. Action packed to the end.
Meanwhile, Trump, yeah.
And
Meanwhile, Trump and Trump. So
yes, he is. And he will continue to be.
and he'll continue to be Trump. You know what? I love this conversation that we had last time because of all of the rhetoric going on. Two things stayed in my maximizing our power, and Texas is gonna be Texas, right? So regardless of what's going on up there, I know the Texas don't want nobody messing with their money and the people that
That's
make their money.
correct.
Like
That is correct.
That, and I really, really started looking up, because I've been out of the game for a minute, of local politics, and I started to get curious about my school board and state legislator, and I see familiar faces on there, meaning I see people who are my color, but based on what's going on, I don't think you can be my kind. So it's been very fascinating to see red state politics, because you can be red, but you don't have to have red state politics. I feel like I understand this, but the racism doesn't have to be a part of it.
Right. But I think that's red state and blue state. I don't think the color coordination effort denies racism. I think they are both extremely racist entities. Both of them just have different ways of exerting their racist behaviors, right? So the blue color blue is a little more covert in how they go about and undermine your things. Um they do things that, for example, I was in New York not long ago, and there was a policy that the mayor, who was a Democrat, and several of the assembly people who are also Democrats were trying to push, which was anyone who was caught with a gun, with or without the commission of a crime. So not like you're in the middle of robbing a convenience store and you have a gun on you or whatever, but just if you are arrested and you have a gun and you are a minor, you will automatically be charged as an adult and it carried a 10-year sentence.
That's ridiculous.
Now,
That's
who do you think that was aimed at? That's,
us.
that's correct. So when we start thinking about these things, right, you know, it's a different way, because I can tell you this much: Texas ain't never giving up no guns. They really don't care. They are like, look, shoot up everybody. We don't care how many kids die. We don't care whatever. What we're not doing, we don't care how many drive-bys happen. Whatever. We got these guns. We keep these guns. Okay. But the left will use gun policy not to penalize the
I
paler
see.
complexion among us. They will use gun laws to penalize those of us who are highly melanated and live in urban epicenters. In the same
Mm,
way, the blue decided they were going to penalize crack.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is an equally horrifying drug as any of the other class of drugs that are in that category, like heroin and anything else. But we didn't do heroin, we did crack. Therefore, we giving you these life sentences for crack. So to me, it's the same. It is the same coin. It just flips differently, got something different on each side, but it's the same racist coin. And I prefer my racism to be overt. I like to know what I'm dealing
Mhm.
with up front, say what you gotta say, and then let's just move on. Like I just need you to be like, hey, you're an N and I hate you. And I'll be like, okay, great. Now what are we gonna do for lunch tomorrow? Versus oh, I think you are so articulate, and I just wonder how people from your circumstance have become so like well off and well known, and you just speak so well, you're so bright, all while undermining you in every single room that they walk into. Like, I don't need that in my life. Just be like, you are in, and let's move on, and then we can figure out how we can work together. I can't figure out how to work with you if you are actively subversive in your approach in undermining me and constantly gaslighting me while you do it.
So it's literally, man, somebody made a parallel. I wish I remember what it was, but they were talking about during Eisenhower era, whatever that era was. They were like, so should we do the president who's KKK or the president? Like, they had to make these decisions, and I'm like, we're still
Mhm.
there.
We're still there.
We're still there with
We're still
these
there.
decisions.
We're
How do you
still there.
want it? You want it with the Vaseline or without the Vaseline?
That is correct. But you're gonna get it either which way. Either which way you get it. And I think I think both of them set us up for variations of the same thing, right? Like I was making Martin watch Handmaid's Tale the other day. I was like, just so you know the direction the country going in, it's gonna be Handmaid's Tale. So you should watch it. And because he didn't understand. He was like, yeah, but they had cell phones. I was like, no, because you're a woman. You can't have a cell phone. Just like you couldn't have a bank account. You can't have a job. Have you seen Handmaid's Tale on Hulu?
I saw a clip where all I know is women are impregnated and they have to have children.
That too. That's a part of it. That's only if you are deemed a woman who's fertile, because there are other women who are not deemed fertile and you don't get to be a handmaid. You go out to the colonies and you work in the nuclear waste area without any protection, or you're a Martha where you serve and you cook the food and whatever. Martha, correct. You don't need. I told my husband, I was like, you don't even need to watch the whole season. Just watch two or three. First 2 or 3 episodes, you'll get the whole gist of everything. You'll be fine.
But
Uh,
we've been look, as Black women, we've been here before, right?
yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We've been bred, we've been enslaved, we've been working now in places we don't have proper protection. Like
That is,
this is not new news for us. We just keep picking the flavor of Satan we have to be with at the moment.
that is correct. That is correct.
Oh, wow. So on maximizing power, I am going to re-involve myself in, even if it's just a town hall meeting in my neighborhood, I'm going to involve myself just to show up and just sit and listen. I have not done that in a good decade. So I'm going to, me and a couple million people need to show up
Ciao.
locally, right? Because
Yeah,
we need
definitely.
it, right? Locally.
Definitely for the local, I'm here for the local politics. The craziness that sits at the federal level, I don't know what they're gonna do with all that mess, but definitely at your local level, your state level, all your state seats, constitutional amendments that are being added, um, all of it. School boards, judges, your criminal judges, your civil judges, your JP courts, all of that stuff.
Okay, that's what I really need to get. That's why I'm going to get educated, because being involved in court with custody, is the nightmare I never ever want to revisit again. I just and that was on a right, just a lick. I can't I I can't imagine what's really going on if that's what's going on with people who supposedly have money and hire lawyers. So yeah, I think the bleakness, like when you do get away from the bleakness, is so anti what they taught us was supposed to be Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, is jarring to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's a temptation to feel powerless. But I thank you for saying that transparency, empathy, authenticity, self-awareness, accountability. I added in discipline, and shooting for balance. Those are superpowers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are superpowers that should get us
Definitely.
somewhere.
Definitely. I
That
know.
was a tough one. We had to go there with
So I had to say something because I'm like, if one more
Harris.
person call this woman a black woman, I'm like, and this is the problem with being a crayon color for ethnicity. Because
Oh, yeah, yeah,
because anybody can
yeah.
be, anybody who looks like you, anybody who has any melanation can be considered black, and that is not the intention. The intention was a way to describe people who were melanated in this particular country, who were brought here against their will and have since survived and had children.
Well, so do you have any recommendations of what should we designate ourselves or call ourselves?
I mean, in theory, we're Americans. Nothing
Oh,
else.
well.
I mean, in theory, now, if you got to give the description of somebody to the police or something, you'd be like, hey, my daughter went missing, or somebody ran into my house or whatever, then you would be like, yeah, they're dark skinned or fair skinned or whatever, right? Like there are descriptors, but to be calling people by a crayon color is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then, of
It
course,
is, and it is
anybody can be it.
crazy.
Because technically, Kamala is a Black woman by the color box of the crayon, right? She's a brown woman, a black, whatever, right? Um, but that's not what was intended by that descriptor.
Right. Right. And I see as a community, we do draft people in. Oh, you black, you black. Yeah, we do.
Because we
We do
again,
draft
the
people.
fact that they had Bill Clinton as talking about he the first Black president, he smoked weed and played the saxophone. I was like, do y'all know how ignorant you sound? Ignorant, ignorant, ignorante. I don't even know how many just ignorant.
And we haven't heard from I haven't, at least, like, because I don't have her phone number. But I would think that I would have heard from a Hillary at this moment in
Oh no,
history.
Hillary's not gonna be speaking up at this point in time, unless it's to endorse somebody. But she ain't raising her hand to be in the action. No. Mm-mm.
Really? Why do you think that is? You
No,
think
her
she's
time
done
has,
done?
yeah, she's done that. Her time has come. It was gone. They chose Barack over her, and now she need to move on with her life. She will not ever be president of the United States of America.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that might have been a hard pill for her to swallow. I would love, I'm
Yes.
gonna put this out there. I would love for us, because I feel like I've heard her speak, right, majority of my life, and she's been in politics. I feel like she's got a lot to say. And if she is at a point in her life that she could truly be transparent about her walk,
Who,
husband
Hillary?
and all. Mm-hmm.
Oh no, she's not ever gonna be transparent. No, no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Wow.
No, that's not happening.
Wow. What a loss, because I think that she could really bring some houses down, but maybe that's the point.
Oh, she could certainly bring some houses down, and that's exactly why it ain't never gonna happen. Yeah,
Wow.
including her own and herself. So yes, no, it's not. She again, I mean, it's a machine, right? The whole thing is a machine on both sides. It's not like this is just a blue thing and whatever. It's a machine on both sides, and that is why you see the super PACs are now getting behind Kamala, and they didn't raise $47 million from her, from both small donors and big donors and all this, and people who, when she was on the primary stage 2 terms ago, couldn't stand her. Like, I hope they scrub their social media, because I'm like, these the same people who could not stand that woman was out here dogging her out, talking about her sexual history, talking about all Black women didn't like her, all this, like the whole nine. And now suddenly they've fallen in line.
Mm.
And now we got Black men for Kamala. We got the women standing, Black women standing strong for Kamala. We got all the people who initially couldn't stand her, was unwilling to give her their vote in the prime. You didn't even have to have a Joe Biden if you wanted Kamala. You could have had her before Joe.
Oh wow. Okay, the machine is that powerful.
She
Okay,
was
so
on the
like how
primary.
Barack did.
She was
Okay.
on the panel of primary. She was one of the double-digit candidates that was up there looking for the nomination. And people told her emphatically and loudly, no. Hell, MF and no is what they told Kamala how many of years ago.
I was not aware of that. Okay.
Yep. And now these are the so again, it's a machine, and I get it. That's the point of a party system. Whoever they tell you to salute, you're supposed to salute. It's why I'm not a party person. It's also why I never joined a sorority. It's why I'm not good at that kind of stuff. Like, I don't just salute because you told me to salute. So it doesn't work for me. But for those that it works for, Godspeed.
Speed and amen. Well, we got 121 days now for federal, and hopefully that's enough impetus to get us involved in local, just because it's just good civics, right?
Yeah,
To be involved in your neighborhood.
definitely.
That's a lot of hope, but I don't like change, and that's a lot of change. So
It's true.
that's a
No
lot
one
of change.
likes change. Also, why I have a job. Um,
That's like, oh, So I am gonna sign us off. I'm gonna say, man, by the time we talk next, who knows? Who knows?
Who knows what the
Who knows?
next podcast will have for you.
All right, blessed be.
Bye, everyone.